Hi, and welcome to TTELT, Teaching Tips for English Language Teachers, a program of educators worldwide. I'm your host today, Melanie Gobert.
Hello, everyone. This is Melanie Gobert, your host for today's episode of TTELT, Teaching Tips for English Language Teachers. Joining us today is Bushra Khan. She is a graduate teaching and research assistant at the American University in Sharjah, located in the United Arab Emirates. Welcome, Bushra.
Thank you, Melanie.
She's going to be talking to us about the benefits of reflective writing. So over to you, Bushra. What are the benefits of reflective writing?
So thank you so much, Melanie, for the introduction. I want to talk about what actually inspired me first to get into this field and what introduced me to reflective writing. We all went through the global pandemic and we all saw the closure of schools and universities worldwide. And we went through this transition of educational platforms to online teaching and learning. And learners really all over the world had to adapt to a whole new style of learning. And this had some serious consequences on their personal as well as educational experiences in terms of social, emotional, psychological, and academic well being. Now, post COVID, this really called for a renewed focus on reinforcing the need for educators to draw attention to and address learners' well being as a central goal of classroom instruction. And considering, looking specifically at writing classrooms, I think when reflective writing is practiced as an act of being, it's really transformative because it shapes and reflects our sense of who we are. It allows us an outlet for expression and opens up possibilities for individual and collective change that are usually undermined by conventional writing instruction. So, with reflective writing, the aim is to draw attention to the process of writing with a focus on writing to be well as opposed to only writing well. So, we're looking at the process and not just at the end product. So, how would we define reflection? Just to quickly go over, we'd look at it as a goal directed and sequential, controlled process by the learner because he or she wants to learn something, to solve a real problem, to solve an ambiguous situation, to address a dilemma, and connect these experiences in their writing. So, it really emphasizes the social and interactive aspect of the process. Now, when we come to looking at reflective writing and how it has been, used in TESOL or implemented in TESOL, often enough, the field really does not incorporate a lot of reflection from the student side. But when it does, it usually follows the traditional approach where reflective writing is done as end of semester assignments, with the focus being on aspects of formal learning. For example, learners would write about how they can be better performers, what are some strategies they can employ to uh, to improve or develop themselves as learners. However, with the reflective writing that I am talking about, the primary focus here should be reflections on well being of the self. Now, this type of personal writing, which really allows learners to be free from the demands of professional academic writing. For example, making new knowledge relevant to English communities, theorizing rather than simply relating personal knowledge. So the focus is really here to allow them to focus on the writing process. Because often enough, when learners start writing, they're really concerned about the writing conventions they need to adhere to. And so the focus shifts from content to looking at organization and structure, and this overwhelms them before they even start writing. And so instead of the how and the why, the focus really should be on the what. Learners should be allowed to think about what they want to write and just write about it. This also helps reduce apprehension with writing. So, the main purpose, if you would say, is of reflective writing of this sort, which really focuses on drawing attention to well being of the self, of the learner. So, we're not just allowing learners an outlet of expression as learners, but also allowing them to go beyond looking at themselves beyond being learners. Maybe there are some things that affect them in their personal lives, which is also having an impact on their life as learners, their academic life, their academic performance. And so allowing them to look at those experiences and document those experiences really, I feel, bridges the gap and allows them to address their overall well-being instead of just learner well-being. For example, it could be catharsis. It could be, a space where they could release, they could vent, or a place where they can process things, try and understand what is happening, maybe organize things, plan things. It's even a way to bear witness. For example, you could be honoring your experiences or documenting them. When you write them down, you're documenting your experiences, the struggles, the maybe even the positive things, your victories in a way, your achievements. It also, and I think, with reflective writing, it also really allows for community building, because when you practice this art of reflection and you allow yourself to share it in communities, it really, you build a community connection with the people you're practicing these reflections with. And this allows you to build comfort with writing in a way. You're less self-judgmental, because again, the focus here isn't on writing conventions, like you need to follow proper structure, and again, that is important, but the purpose of this type of writing is all about enhancing learner well-being, which will then enhance your overall well-being and your overall performance as a learner. And when it comes to looking at benefits in terms of how does this help with academic benefits, because this type of writing allows you to just focus on the writing aspect, it really increases your flow of writing, because you don't have to worry about what I'm writing correct in from a grammatical sense, is it accurate. The focus is really just write down what you are thinking, write down your ideas, so you develop a flow with writing and you develop comfort with writing, which I think is really important when in academia. So I want to talk a little bit about a project that I did inspired by reflective writing. So we introduced, in an academic writing classroom, we introduced this type of reflection where the focus was on well-being and improving learners' writing attitudes. So learners were engaged in regular reflections on a weekly basis, and they were allowed to free write on topics like music, short-term and long-term goals, safety, feedback, time thieves, well-being, and more. And how these reflections were done was they were introduced in the beginning of class, and learners were given 5 minutes to write these reflections. And the main goal, the main requirement over here was just to write. So they were given a prompt and they were asked to write about it. Now, engagement, how was engagement with the task measured? As long as they wrote anything on the topic, it was considered, they've achieved what we asked them to do. So the focus was to get learners to practice or get them into this habit of, you don't have to worry too much when you start writing. Your focus should be on content. Your focus should be on, these are some of my ideas and how can I just focus on getting them down on paper and how can I write it. And we were really pleased to find that the study showed improvements not just in well-being, but also in an improvement, a positive improvement in their writing attitudes, where learners' testimonials showed that in the reflection journals showed that they had improved they were more confident with their writing. They had reduced anxiety. They were more comfortable just writing down ideas and communicating. And it also improved well-being because it gave them a space to talk about things that they would usually not be able to address. Maybe some personal struggles or just academic struggles that were affecting their performance in certain courses. Maybe there was more of an academic load in a certain course, which was affecting their performance in another course. And also, some of them documented their struggles with writing, where they said that writing courses are not always easy for them, but practicing this type of reflection developed a comfort with writing, developed help, and developed a confidence in themselves and their writing. So they were able to come to these academic assignments more easily, a bit more relaxed and more open to, the whole writing process.
Okay.
So how would you?
I just
Yes.
have a couple. We just have about 1 minute left, but I do have a couple of questions, practical questions. Did they do the writing in class? Was it with a pen? Were they allowed to write at home? Did they type?
Yes, so they were given the option of choosing to write, however, either they could type it out on a computer or they were given the option to write on pen and paper. And they always did this in the beginning of class, so with the instructor present. So we would just give them 5 minutes to write. So it was
Okay.
always done in class. And if someone happened to miss a class, they would be, completing their reflections back at home.
So there were no instances of people asking AI to write their reflections that they gave you to read.
Not really, because it was very in the moment. And, then these reflections, the topics that were given to them were also kind of personal. So rather than just well-being. So I think because it was personal, it took the whole AI, they couldn't really use AI because it was all about personal experiences and how these things had an impact on them.
Okay, just one last question. I mean, how did you get students to write really honestly when they knew that the teacher was going to be reading it in the end?
Yes, a very valid concern. Thank you for that. I think what's really important when it comes to this type of writing, because it addresses personal issues and personal, revelations from the students. What's really important is to build trust between the teacher and the students, and to create this safe space and environment in the classroom where there's a communication between them, that this trust won't be violated. And another thing is, often enough, that, when an assignment is being graded, students tend to write what they think the people want to hear. So one way to incorporate this type of reflection is you don't assign grades to it. So when there aren't grades, you're not giving out grades on it, they're not being graded on it. It really allows them to, they know there are no consequences to whatever they say. So they know it's just an activity that is being practiced, and it's something that is being done for their benefit. Something, it's not benefiting the instructor in any way. So I think that's really important, that you don't assign grades to it, and it's done more as like a warm-up activity or a follow-up activity that's just incorporated in the classroom.
Okay, thank you very much, Bushra.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure.
Thank you for joining us. This has been your host, Melanie Gobert, on today's episode of TTELT, Teaching Tips for English Language Teachers. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. Share with us how you are using these tips. Leave us a comment or voice message on social media or at ttelt.org. Thanks for joining this episode of TTELT, brought to you by educators worldwide. Follow, like, and subscribe to TTELT on your social media, and try a new teaching tip today.